Thank you, Father Kowarski, Father Becker, Reverend Fathers, any honored guests, and lastly, my dearest and most beloved brethren. My vocation story, just like many of ours, starts with a good Catholic family. However, there is one caveat. I grew up at the Shrine of Our Lady of Good Help. As many of you know, this is the only church-approved Marian apparition site in the United States. My parents worked out there for 25 years. We lived on the premise. So as you can imagine, at a very young age, I had quite the exposure to Catholicism, particularly to Our Lady. But my vocation seeds first were planted in serving Mass at 4 years old. My mom made me serve at such a young age because I was so badly behaved in the pews. So she's like, we'll put him on the altar. And I soon fell in love with it. I began serving for an old retired priest who had suffered a lot, but he was on fire with the heart of Christ. And I saw that at a young age, and I'm like, that's what I want to be like. So when I was younger, anytime anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I want to be a priest. Well, by the time I was 11 or 12, that kind of faded. I was homeschooled, and contrary to popular belief, you can have bad friends who are also homeschooled. So I started, through the influence of my friend, I started to not care for my faith as much. I didn't want to serve Mass. I found things about the church very disinteresting. And my mom forced me to serve, and I hated it. And so I went through a span of that for about 2 years. But when I was 13, I went on a Steubenville Youth Conference. And that changed my attitude towards the faith. I started to take it in my heart again. So the following year when I was 14, I came on another Steubenville Youth Conference, this time here to St. Paul, to Steubenville North. And I was in adoration that night, and I remember the monstrance was processing around, but it stopped when it got to me, and the priest turned, and the monstrance was right in front of me. And I heard this voice just in my head, be my priest. And I was like, no. Like, no, God. So I remember getting out of that, and I looked at my best friend Sam, who was with me, and I said, I know God wants me to be a priest, but I don't want to do it. Well, that soon faded. As I got back to the shrine, I started getting more involved, giving tours, serving for Mass, getting really involved with the liturgy there. And that attitude and love of the priesthood really grew back in me because there was a priest that had just got moved there. And I remember seeing him hear 8 hours of confessions quite regularly. And I was very close with Father, and it impressed on me that love for the priesthood. And so by the time I was 15, 16, I was dead set on the priesthood. I had graduated high school at 16, was going to do 2 years of college, and then I was going to enter seminary when I was 18. Well, that changed in February of 2015. My mother was fired, very surprisingly to myself, and it created a whole political situation up there. But it really hurt me because I saw a side of the church that we don't often want to talk about, and that's the politics. And I did not want to be a priest after that. I said, if this is what the church is like, that's not what I want to give my life to. And it turned me off. So following that, I had been quite hefty at that point. I was a chunky boy. I lost some weight. I lost about 70 pounds. And so I was like, since I'm not doing this priesthood thing, I'm like, there's girls. And so I started talking to some girls, and I came in contact with an old friend of mine. And we had started talking. There was one minor problem. She had a boyfriend. But I was like, minor issue. So we kind of had a thing going on. I was, side hoe. And so I was going on with this for this summer. And I was going on into the fall. And I transferred out here that September. And I was enjoying it up until that September. That's when it really changed. I was driving back every weekend. I was focused on this. I was like, this is going to change. Eventually, I'm going to be the boyfriend, and, things are going to change. Well, it just got too exhausting for me. So that first weekend of October, I just had a breakdown. I ended it with things with her. It was a Friday. I remembered very vividly. I hadn't been really practicing the faith too much during that month. I remember going over to that chapel over there, St. Thomas Chapel, and I broke down in tears for like 2 hours in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And I was like, I need to pray more. That was the thought. I need to pray more. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to daily Mass, and I'm going to do a Holy Hour every day. About a week later, in Holy Hour, that same thing happened that was at the Steubenville conference. I heard that in my head, be my priest. I was like, oh, great God, not again. So I called the vocation director the next day. I said, could you meet with me? He's like, yeah, I'm coming up to the Twin Cities. So we met, had a good conversation. And then about a week and a half later, he came back up again. And I asked him, I said, Father, could I have the application? I really know this is what God is asking of me. Well, I called my mom that day, and I had asked her, I told Mom, she had no idea this was going on. I called her, and she said, we just finished today a 54-day rosary novena for your vocation that you would be a priest. And I started bawling, my mom was bawling, and to top it off, that priest that had first planted those seeds of my vocation, they were at his grave praying that rosary. They drove 2 hours to go to his grave to pray the last novena. And so Mary has had a hand in my vocation. She's the reason I'm standing here today. And since entering seminary, it hasn't always been a joyride. I'll admit that. If I wanted to go off and feel good, I'd be on a train headed to Vegas right now. But I will tell you this. Since being here, it has not been easy. It hasn't been rainbows every day. But it has taught me something important. And it's brought me inner peace. It's brought a deep peace inside of me. And that key is how to suffer and die to myself every single day so that I can conform my heart more towards his heart. And I hope and pray by the grace of God and the intercession of Our Lady that by learning to make these small sacrifices every single day, I will someday be able to offer the greatest sacrifice of all, the holy sacrifice of the Mass. Praise be Jesus Christ.
Now and forever.